Welcome to the Ambitious Women of Color Summer of Leadership series, where we use the next few months to intentionally become the obvious choice for leadership roles. I'm your host, Jessica Lynn Rojas. Before we get into today's episode, I want to make sure you know about something I created specifically for the women listening to this podcast. It's called the Paid and Promoted series, a free 5-day coaching experience for ambitious women of color who are doing great work but aren't seeing the leadership, opportunities, the recognition, or compensation they know they're capable of. And I want to be honest with you about why right now is actually the most important time to go through this. You see, most people think career growth happens during performance review seasons, but the conversations that shapes next year's opportunity are often happening right now during the summer. Review season is usually when those decisions get announced. The conversations that influence those decisions are often happening months earlier. The women who step into bigger opportunities next year are building towards them right now. That's exactly why I'm spending this summer doing the work alongside you. We're documenting our impact, building our leadership stories, and intentionally becoming the obvious choice for what's next together. So if you're ready to stop hoping somebody notices your potential and start intentionally becoming leadership material, head to the show notes and join us inside Paid and Promoted. Now let's get into today's episode. Welcome to the Summer of Leadership. I am so happy that you're here. So I had the thought this other day while I was preparing for a new leadership opportunity. Interviews don't make you leadership material. They just reveal whether you're already becoming her. And the more I sat with that thought, the more I realized that's actually what this whole summer is about. It's not about getting ready when the opportunity shows up. It's about becoming the woman who's already ready before it does. Okay, so I wasn't planning to record this episode this way. When I mapped out my summer series, I had this whole thing outlined, and I knew I wanted to talk about things like positioning, visibility, what it takes to become the obvious choice for leadership, clean, organized, ready to record. And then something happened behind the scenes that made me stop and go, wait, I can't do this episode this way. Not the way I planned. Because what's happening in my actual life right now is too connected to what I'm trying to teach. So here's what's been going on. I still remember opening the email one of my managers from my department sent about 2 leadership positions opening. Actually, I remember staring at it for a second. I wasn't even looking for it. Well, actually, that's not true. I wasn't actively looking for a new position, but I was not looking. You know what I mean? Anyway, and there they were. I think my heart skipped for a second because there were 2 senior positions opening in my department right now, and I applied to both of them. And honestly, the timing really does blow my mind because here I was creating this entire summer series around positioning yourself for leadership, and then almost immediately these 2 positions opened up. And honestly, it made me laugh because isn't that how kind of life works sometimes? One minute you start teaching something and then the next minute life hands you an opportunity to practice. And sometimes it's incredibly inconvenient, right? Where it's okay, I'm getting tested and this is really happening. So I thought, I guess we're doing this together. And for a minute, I almost didn't tell you. And honestly, I didn't want to keep it private. That wasn't the reason why I was thinking maybe I'm not going to talk about it. But if I'm being honest, it was because this voice showed up in my head that said, Jessica, what if you don't get it? What if you're out here telling women to position themselves for leadership and then your own process doesn't happen the way that you hope for? Does that mean that everything I've been teaching doesn't work? So that was the fear that I was dealing with. It's not like I don't want to talk about it. Let me wait till I have the results and then I can be like, hey, this is what's been happening and this is what happened and now I got this role and see, everything works. And it was just, that voice that I think we all get, right? It starts having a second guess our approach or having a second guess what we're doing and really wondering whether or not what we're doing is working or what we're doing is helping. But then the more that I sat with that voice, I recognized it because it's the exact same voice I coach women every single day. The one that ties your worth to the outcome instead of the work, right? So it's dismissing everything that you already done, dismissing all the things that have led you to be where you are right now in that identity. We can be really confident and know that we are worthy of being in that space, know that we are qualified and ready for the next level. But then the time the opportunity comes, we start second guessing ourselves. So it's 2 different parts of you. The part that knows that you are ready and capable and already leadership material. And then the part that's wait, what if that's not true? And what if you can't do this? What if it's too much for you to handle? What if you're not capable of it? So I decided to tell you anyway. And of course, I don't know where this ends, but I know that watching someone actually practice this in real time instead of just teaching before I know the outcome is going to be really useful for you. And honestly, I think this is more useful for you instead of waiting for a perfectly packaged success story and then handing it to you and be like, hey, a position opened up. This is what I did. And then I got it. And it's not really letting you in on what are the things that are actually happening in the in between? What are the challenges that I'm dealing with myself that, you can connect with and see what are the decisions and actions that I take so that at the end of the day, whatever the result is, I can see whether or not like it helped me become a better version of me, help me really challenge my thoughts and be able to like give it my all regardless of the outcome. So here's what I know going into it. Whether or not I get this role, the leader that I've become over the past year, or actually over the past few years that I've been doing this work, the relationships I built are real. The positioning I've done is real. And none of that disappears based on one hiring decision because interviews don't make you leadership material. They reveal who you already been becoming. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Before we get into my story, I want to check in with you for a second. So last week, we talked about the proving trap, right? So how the strategies that got you into the room, so like everything, the hustle and the hard work that got you to where you are now, like taking on more, making yourself the person everybody depends on, how that could actually be keeping you from moving up. And I left you with one question. I asked you to honestly look at your calendar and ask yourself how much of what is in it is driven by your actual goals versus how much is driven by your shoulds or fear of disappointing people. And then I asked you to start a leadership log or a leadership tracker. And if you're already part of my Paid and Promoted series, you have your impact tracker and your leadership tracker. And if you have them, pull them out because I think what I'm about to share is going to land differently when you have your own evidence in front of you. And here's the question I want you to sit with throughout this entire episode. If a senior leadership position opened up at your company right now, not someday, not tomorrow, but right now, what would the people making the decision already know about you? Not what you're going to tell them at the interview, but what have they already experienced from you? Because here's the reality. In a lot of organizations, by the time the job gets posted, leaders already have names in their heads of the people that they can picture doing this. They already know because they've been watching. They already know who's been seen stepping up into leadership, and they already know who they can trust. So the interview matters, but it's usually not the first impression, it's a confirmation. When I realized that, I started looking at every meeting differently. So let's hold on to that thought because we're going to be coming back to it. Okay, so I'm going to share another story. Let me take you back to December of 2025. So I had been in my current promotion, like my current role right now, for about 6 months when a similar role opened up in my company. And when I saw that, I immediately started thinking like, I'm totally going to apply. I said I wanted to work towards the next promotion. So now is the time. And you see, there's actually no promotion track in my company. Like if you want a promotion, you have to just wait for an opportunity to open up and then apply with internal candidates and external candidates, just like everyone else. Like there's no track. Even if you're doing really well, there's not like you're doing so well, let's promote you or we're going to create like a new position for you. That doesn't happen. It has to be a business need and there has to be an open position. So as you can tell, like if everyone's just as ambitious, if everyone's just working towards getting a promotion or getting the next level role, then there's going to be so many people to apply. The last time I had the promotion, I told my boss like, thank you, love this, and I am going to work towards the next one now. So wanted to be upfront, that was my goal. I wanted her to start looking at those things and wanted to show her like, this is where I want to be in the next 6 months and the next year. So I'm working towards that because that's really important, right? It's really important for leaders to know what you're working towards so that they can start also evaluating you differently and start seeing those leadership qualities now. So when that position opened up, I was excited and I started reaching out to the hiring managers and I set up one-on-ones with them because I wanted to understand what were they working on, what's in their portfolio, where are they navigating, what are the needs for that department, and wanted to have those conversations early, right? So I did that. And that's what I normally do when I'm applying for internal roles. So in case you are taking notes of what to do when you are applying to an internal role, it is already have your resume ready. And then when an opportunity comes up, you just refresh it and update it to be tailored to that role. So we're not just applying with a generic resume. We are making sure that the resume is reflective of the role you're applying to, reflective of the responsibilities, and can showcase the value that you brought into those previous roles that are going to be applicable and helpful towards the role that you're applying to. Okay, so that was one. So I had my resume ready and I updated it. And then I applied within a few days. The role that I'm currently applying to, I applied actually the same day because I was a little bit ahead. I already had my resume for the last role, but there were a lot of things that happened in this last 6 months that I wanted it to reflect in this new one. And actually, one of the reasons it wasn't as hard and why I was able to apply that same day was because of these trackers that I have, right? So I have my impact tracker, a leadership tracker, and what I also have is a story bank where I start creating stories based on everything I've been tracking, right? So, like, if there are situations where I'm like, this would be a great story for an interview, then I start putting it in my story bank. That way, I have those handy and I can remember. So, the fresher it is in my mind, it's the best time to put it in this. So, I started going to all my resources. But then for this position 6 months ago, I actually stopped. Once I went in and put things in my story box, I actually stopped using it. So I have these ready. So when I am applying and interviewing for roles that I can refer back to them. But then there was something in my head that was like, oh, if I go back and start rehearsing and preparing for the interview and doing mock interview and answering question, what if I sound robotic and I sound like not me. So I was like, I'm just going to trust myself. I'm living in the work right now. So I'm just going to talk about what I'm currently working and let it speak for itself because I don't want to over prepare and sound rehearsed. But if I'm honest with myself, and I had to get really honest about this, that was actually not what was happening. So getting back to those parts of you, right? So there was one part of me that was afraid, but it wasn't coming out as being afraid. So one part of me wasn't sure if this was the right role for me. So I had learned through those one-on-one conversations, the work that those two roles would have been fulfilling, it just wasn't interesting to me, if I'm being honest. It wasn't what I wanted to be doing. You see, what I'm doing right now, I really do love. I love the work that I do. I love seeing the impact that the work that I do is doing directly to vulnerable populations. So if I'm going to be working a different portfolio, I really want to love it. And just the work that the other roles were going to be involved in, it just didn't really call to me. And if I'm being honest, there were other reasons too, because in the current work that I'm doing, it's really complex and there's a lot of like politics involved between entities in our company. And not long before I applied, the leader for that work had talked about like, oh, we don't really want much movement in our team right now. We're in a good place and we just can't afford to lose anyone or to have movement in our team because we're like in a really good place right now. So I was taking that in with me. I was feeling guilty about applying to this role. There's a part of me that's like, hey, you got to look out for yourself. This is for your best interest. This is for your growth. And those points are valid. And then there was the other part that's like, what are they going to think? Like, you just got that promotion and you're already trying to like move out of it. And the promotion that I had prior, it kept me in the same type of work I was doing. I was feeling like, oh, I just got this promotion and they're going to think I'm not grateful that they promoted me to this more pay, higher role. So I was taking all that with me, right? And then just wondering if then they're like, oh, she's just moving too fast. Like we just promoted her. And then underneath that, I was coming with that guilt, but then I was also coming with the guilt of like, what if getting this other role, which means more responsibility, what if that comes at the cost of the work-life balance that I work so hard to create, so hard to put in place? So going back to the why I skipped preparing the way that I did and said it was because I was trusting myself. I think it was more that I was protecting myself. Because if we're honest, if you're not going fully into something, then it can't hurt as much if it doesn't work out. Because, I was already going in where like, I don't know if I want this and I don't want to really leave my team in the work that I'm doing. But I said I want to get a promotion and I said that I want to grow and this is what I'm preaching. So I have to do it even if I don't know if I want to do this, right? Or at least that's what's the story I was telling myself. But then I realized that that wasn't really self-trust. It wasn't that like, okay, just trust your intuition and you're going to know what to say because you're doing the work anyway. So there's no need to prepare. But that was really more like self-protection pretending to be self trust. And I think that's one of the hardest things to recognize because it wasn't coming out as fear like you're not capable of or you're not ready for that. That wasn't the issue. So it sounds more like responsibility. It sounds like you're just waiting for the right timing. It sounds like you're protecting your peace. It sounds like you're trusting yourself until one day you realize that you're taking yourself out of opportunities for months. I didn't get the role. And then I sat with it and I was like, you know what? That's okay. It wasn't meant for me. Honestly, I do think that it wasn't the right role for me. But then it just did help me realize what I was coming into the interview carrying. And again, I've said that by the time you get to the interview, it is just a confirmation, but maybe everything leading up to that was showing like she's not the right fit for this role. And not that I'm not a right fit for that leadership position. It's just that wasn't the right portfolio for me to be working on. And that is okay. And I don't know if this ever happened to you. Maybe it's not in an interview. Maybe you talked yourself out fully preparing for something because you didn't fully want to go for it. And if you don't fully prepare for it, it doesn't hurt as bad. Maybe it was like a salary conversation you kept postponing, or a role you didn't apply because you weren't quite sure if you were ready, or a recommendation you softened because you didn't want to be wrong. But let me be honest with you, that's not caution. That's a fear of having to prove that you're worthy of the role, worthy of the position, worthy of wanting more. And I think a lot of us have been there, and then we call it something else. So after that happened, after, the last role that I didn't get, I made a decision. I wasn't going to obsess over the role I didn't get, but I was going to make changes. I was going to obsess on becoming her, becoming the leader that I know I already am. And I want to be specific about what that actually looks like because I think this is where it gets real. What that looks like, that on visibility, I stopped waiting for my work to speak for itself. I started making sure the right people understood what I was contributing, what I was thinking about, where I was headed. Not in a self-promotion way, in a strategic way. I got intentional about who needed to know my work and made sure that they did. Make sure that they knew what I was working on, what I was thinking, what recommendations I was giving, what impact I was seeing from the work that I was doing. That was more important than just like talking about myself or being like, look, I have a list of all these things that I've been doing, because it wasn't about the list of the things. It was about my thinking around them, my thought leadership. It was about them seeing how I was influencing decisions, them knowing the value that I brought, the value of the work that I did, not as like you're doing a lot, but what you're doing is moving the needle. What you're doing is bringing change. What you're doing is, creating efficiency. It's improving quality measures. It's bringing consensus amongst stakeholders that, are usually not agreeing on something, and you helped bring them together and agree on something. And that's a big deal. And then on the authority piece, I worked on how I was showing up in these conversations. So I moved away from just reporting what was happening and having a point of view of what should happen next. So again, it was giving my recommendations with confidence instead of just having them as suggestion. It was not waiting until I had permission from someone to make a decision I already knew that I was qualified to make. I was making executive decisions. I was taking charge and ownership of the work that I was doing, and not just like, oh, I don't know if we should do this. Let me speak to so and so. And in certain situations, I do need to come to leaders and get consensus or get approval on certain things. But because I've been working in that space for a year and a half now, I was at a point that I could be making those decisions. And then I can be coming to my leaders and be like, hey, this is what we've been working on. These are the decisions that I made. This is where it's heading. And giving more of like, I'm solving these things. I am addressing these things, and just going to them when I needed to escalate something, when I needed to really solve something that required their input, that required their approval, and being more hands-on and having them be more hands-off, because I've already built that relationship with them where they can trust that I'm making the right decisions, and they can trust that they don't have to worry about the work because I have it handled, and I'm going to go to them when it's needed to have their input. And it helps to lessen the load for them as well, and also shows the value that I'm bringing, because now they don't have to be involved in the nitty gritty, in the like small details, and just need to be aware of what's going on, aware of my thought process around it, aware of the decisions that I'm making, and then know that everything's in the right hands. And then now when it comes to the internal piece, I really worked hard on that voice that said I had to prove that I was the right one. The voice that maybe was the one that showed up in the first interview trying to convince people instead of leading the conversation. And that's important because we're talking about two different parts, and the part of me that knew I was ready and knew that I was capable, but then the part that showed up to that interview was the part of me that was trying to prove, because I'm already coming in with, all that mind drama, but I'm already in front of them. So I'm like, well, I need to prove that I'm the right fit, even if I don't believe that this is the right role for me. And then I had my mid year review. So I recently had this like a few weeks ago. And I remember sitting there with my manager and we were going through what my peers and leaders have said about me and the work that I've done so far. So we do the mid-year reviews and then we do end of year reviews. And these are 360. So the people that I work with, like my peers, can give feedback on me as well as my clients. So these are the leaders that I work with directly. And so listening to my manager give all of the feedback, they talked about the relationships I have built across the organization. They talked about how I was influencing leaders above me and they noticed that. So I was like, wow. They talked about my executive presence, my judgment, and the trust that I had earned. And that actually got me a little emotional, if I'm going to be honest, because I had been working so hard to show up as that version, right? To show up really showcasing my leadership, positioning myself, and really showing up as I already had the next role. And what I mean by showing up as the next role, it wasn't that I was doing more work to show that I was ready for the next role, but I was showing up to these meetings, showing up to my work, showing up to everything that I did as if I already had that role. And that's really different because it's not like, let me do more work and show I am capable of the extra responsibility, but let me show up as I already have that role. I already have that title. I'm already her. Because that is very different. And then what was really important was, again, nobody was talking about like she worked hard or she worked the hardest, right? They weren't saying she always said yes to everything. They were talking about how available I was or how much I took on again. So it wasn't about showing up as like doing more. They talked about my influence. They talked about my judgment. They talked about the relationships, my leadership. And I remember thinking, well, that's different. That is what leadership actually gets measured on, not whether I was working the hardest or putting in the most work or carrying everything or having the most on my plate. And then something hit. They were describing positioning. They were just not calling it that, right? But when I get to like what I've been working on, it was all positioning. It wasn't me working harder. It was me showing up as that virgin and positioning myself as that leader before I even had the title. They were watching me the whole time. I just didn't realize they were paying attention. I was hoping that they did, for sure. I'm positioning myself that way, hoping that they see it. And it was nice to know that they did. Because I think a lot of us assume that people are evaluating us based on how much we work or whether we're dependable or whether we get everything done. But they're paying attention to something completely different. They were paying attention to how I think, how I influence, how I build relationships, how I show up when things get hard. And that's positioning. Positioning isn't something you tell people you've done. It's something they experience from you. And I'm so proud of myself, honestly, because I knew I had grown. I felt it. And I remember thinking, this is exactly what I've been working towards, not for the review, but for the leader that I wanted to become. The review just confirmed that other people were experiencing me in that way. And that's something I was already intentionally working towards. And I want you to know something. This is actually how I coach. I don't just look at what happened. I look at why it happened. So we look at every opportunity as information, every interview, every performance review, every difficult conversation. And then we ask, what worked? What got in the way? What needs to shift before the next opportunity? We evaluate it. We don't just say, you didn't get the last row. Okay, let's work on this, and this, and that. Because the right strategy is going to be based on where are the areas that you need to strengthen and not like you failed at things, but let's understand what happened there. Let's understand why you didn't show up the way that you know you are. Going back to the part of me that showed up in that interview. Like I had been working in positioning, I had been doing the right things, but I didn't show up that way. I show up at wanting to prove, not at showcasing my leadership. You see the difference? One is like, hey, I'm the right fit because X, Y, and Z versus like, this is what I did in this situation. This is what I was thinking. This is why I decided to go this way. And this is what happened because of that. You see the difference there? Because a lot of times we think, okay, it didn't work out. I just need to try harder the next time. And I don't really believe that's where career growth comes from. I think it comes from becoming more intentional every time. Every level asks you to become someone new. When I wanted to be in management consulting role, I had to become the person who could lead. Now, working towards this leadership role, I have to become the person who thinks differently again, because every new position requires a different level of thinking, a different level of approach, and a different way. Growth doesn't stop once you get promoted. It just asks something different of you each time. And for this new position, I'm not trying to become a different person. I'm trying to become the leader I've already been practicing on being. And I want that to show up in the interview because I've already been doing all the work. I just need to be her in that interview. Almost immediately after this review, like literally, I want to say the next day or something, these two positions open up. And the difference in how I responded was immediate. So this time I applied like literally that day without hesitation. I didn't have any questions of whether I wanted, any guilt of moving forward or fear in disguise as intuition. I knew that this was the right role for me. So I reached out to both of the hiring managers because again, it was two roles. It was a lot more clear exactly what portfolios they were going to be working on and what type of work they were doing. And I knew like immediately which one was my top choice and what I would hit it off the park. And then my other choice, I knew the type of work that it would involve. And I knew that I would love that work too and that I would be a great fit for both. So again, that same day, I applied to the role. I reached out to the hiring manager that sent the email. And then I told her, hey, that I'm interested in this role and I want to set up a one-on-one with you to understand the portfolio, understand what you're navigating and what is needed for this role. And then also use that opportunity to talk about like what I'm already working and how it connects to what they need. So I set up those two conversations. And then I also talked to my current manager and she was really supportive of it. I wanted to be transparent with her and let her know right away that I was applying to these. And she even offered to do mock interviews with me, which I'm totally going to take this time and I'm not going to have fear of over preparing. I already had those one-on-ones with these managers and we talked about what are the areas that this person would be working in, what are the business needs of this, what are the challenges that are going on. And then I shared how some of the work I'm doing now, how it relates to that or my previous experience. Also just giving my feedback on what is the most challenging things that they're experiencing in that portfolio. I gave them my thoughts on what I thought would be some solutions or an approach to take and how I would do it if I were working in that role. Because of the way that our department is structured and there is no direct path for promotion, everybody that is in my current role who is interested is likely applying. And honestly, we have amazing, really smart, intelligent, capable leaders. So I know the competition is going to be competitive. And I'm not going to pretend that it just, didn't bother me at all. I did have a little bit of nervousness when I found out like specific people that are also going towards that role. Because the one thing is like knowing, okay, I'm sure everyone's going to apply. And then it's knowing who's actually your competition. And then you're like, wait, you go that like little moment. I think it was only a few seconds, but where I'm like, wait, they're really good. What do they have that I don't? Or what do I have that they don't? And then I was like, no. Jessica, we're not going there. Because at the end of the day, they're not you. And that's something I believe, not that I'm better than anyone, is that nobody is me. They don't bring what I bring, and only I have control over what I bring into the room. Only I have control into the leader that I am. And if this is the right fit for me, if I am the right fit for it, then it's going to be mine. And I just need to show up as that person, show up as a leader that I've already become. And that creates a different way of preparing. Because if I'm trying to prove that I am the right fit, trying to prove that I am better than others, then I'm missing showing the leader that I am. I'm missing the opportunity to leverage this space to show them my thinking, my influence, my leadership. So when I was thinking about that, that's when it clicked for me. And I was like, I really want to share this with my audience because I think that a lot of us believe that positioning starts when the role gets posted. That once that role is posted, that's where like, oh, I need to start performing. Because I used to feel that way again. Like, okay, now it's time to update my resume. It's time to get visible. It's time to prepare. It's time to like now show them in those meetings between now and the interview that I'm the right fit. But sitting here through this process again, I realized something. Promotion season doesn't start when the job gets posted. It starts the day after your last promotion. And if you think about that, it changes how you move forward. Because most of us spend years waiting until there's an opening, waiting until review season, waiting till someone taps us on the shoulder and it's like, hey, we're promoting you. But leaders don't wait to start becoming ready. They start the day they step into the new role they're already in now. Positioning is the relationship you build before you need them, the recommendations you make before when anyone asks you, the visibility you create before anything's on the line, the way you show up in the room you're already in before anyone has given you a bigger one. The interview is not where you prove yourself. It's where you reveal everything you've been intentionally building long before the opportunity opened. I want you to think about the last month at work. Like seriously, don't think about your to-do list. Don't think about how busy you've been. Think about what your director actually experienced from you. If I asked them to describe you, what would they say? Will they describe your thinking or will they describe your workload? They experienced someone who solved problems, someone who connected people, someone who influenced without authority, someone who thought strategically, or did they mostly experience someone who completed tasks really well? Because those are actually different experiences. One gets remembered as someone who gets things done, and the other gets remembered as someone people trust to lead. That's what I want you sitting with this summer. Not how hard you've been working, how to be experienced differently by the people who matter for what's next for you. And that's what I'm doing alongside with you right now. Every week this summer, I'm updating my own impact tracker. I'm documenting my leadership moments. And you know what's funny? Half of the things I'm writing down right now probably would have never made it in my tracker like 6 months ago before I was really diving into like what are the actual leadership moments, not just the ones that are clear and like, oh, that was for sure a leadership moment, not the ones that they told me were leadership moments, but the ones that are small and made a small change, like change the direction of where we were going. Because before it would be like, oh, I did this project and then it yielded this result. So because of that impact, I'm a leader. But now it's something small like yesterday, we made a shift to the direction of a really complex presentation that my boss and I have been working out for the past like week and a half. We've been working to try and synthesize all this complicated data together to share a story. And we're halfway through this evaluation period and halfway through having individual conversations with all the medical centers that we oversee in Northern California. And we wanted to leverage the opportunity of being in front of executive leadership to like talk about everything that we've been doing and what are the results from it. But then we're still halfway through that evaluation period. And I didn't think it was the right time. Like we had the presentation today and I told her, I don't think that this is the right time to come with these recommendations because we don't even know if they're the right recommendation. I don't want to waste their time and being like, hey, this is what we need from you if that is not what we really need from them. So then we shifted our approach. We're like, okay, let's simplify this. We cut out like 10 slides we already had created. And we're like, this is a story. We're going to talk about like, okay, we're showing the improvement. We're showing all the different strategies that we've implemented in that time period and what that has improved. We're showing what are the early learnings that we're having from these conversations with all the medical centers. And then we are confirming what it is that we need from them. We want to confirm the pace and the direction, but we're not coming with like a specific ask of like, okay, based on all this is what we need from you. Because we don't have that right answer. And again, like the moment that I captured of what was my leadership wasn't like, I created this presentation. I shared all the hard work that I'm doing. I shared all the impact that I'm making. And I had a chance of doing it in front of leadership. No. My leadership moment is that one conversation with my boss where I told her that I didn't think this was the right approach. That is my leadership moment. And that's exactly the things that I'm writing on my tracker. I'm writing down the influence I have in conversations, the recommendations, the decisions I made with confidence. Because when I sit down in that interview, I don't want to rely on memory. I want evidence. I want evidence of these leadership moments that I'm having because positioning isn't something that you tell people that you've done. Is something they experience from you. And that tracker is how I start seeing my own evidence clearly of what are the leadership moments and what is the impact that I'm having. And if you're sitting there thinking, okay, Jessica, I want to become that version of myself too, then you can start with Paid and Promoted. Not because it's another free resource that's going to magically change your career, but because that's literally what I'm working towards myself this summer. I'm filling out the trackers, I'm documenting the leadership moments, I'm preparing for my own interview stories, I'm coaching myself through my own beliefs that come up. And I thought, why not do it together? So if you're interested, you can join me as I do this. There's a link in the show notes. And if you already went through it, pull out those trackers, look at what you built, because that is the evidence that the next opportunity is going to reveal. And again, I do not know where this process is going to end for me around this new opportunity, but I do know this. Whether or not that role is mine, I'm walking into that interview a completely different leader than I was a year ago. I have evidence. I've built the relationships. I have clarity of who I've been becoming, and no one could take that away from me. So this summer isn't about getting the role. It's about whether I became the leader I know I'm capable of becoming. And if I do that, whether or not this opportunity or the next one, I'll be ready. Because leadership isn't something you become when someone gives you the title. Leadership is who you become long before anyone gives you the title. And tomorrow morning, when you log into your work, don't ask yourself, how do I get everything done today? Ask yourself, what will someone experience from me today? That's the question that changed the way I work, because that's where positioning starts. So thank you for spending the time with me today. I'll see you next week. Before I let you go, I want to leave you with this. This summer isn't just about preparing for our next opportunity. It's about becoming the kind of leader people already trust before the opportunity ever opens up. The woman who communicates her value, who makes her impact visible, who influences decisions, who's already being experienced as leadership material. Because promotions don't just happen during performance review seasons. They're built in the conversations, the relationships, and the moments that happen long before anyone posts the job. That's exactly why I created Paid and Promoted. It's a free 5-day coaching experience where we'll spend this summer documenting our impact, building our leadership stories, and intentionally becoming the obvious choice for what's next. And I'm doing this alongside with you. As I continue to position myself for my own leadership opportunities, I'm using these same tools, asking myself the same questions, and practicing the same strategies I'm inviting you to practice. Because I don't want to just teach you this. I want this to be something we live together. And if you're ready to stop hoping somebody notices your potential and start intentionally building the career that you want, head to the show notes and join us inside Paid and Promoted. And if you're ready for more personalized support, send me a DM on Instagram at Jessica Lynn Rojas or book a sales call at jessicalynrojas.com/scheduling. Take care of yourself, career baddies. Vámonos.